This is Curious Brain Thoughts.
Bienvenue. Willkommen. Welcome
Hola. Oh no, that's hello.
to Curious Brain Farts. It's a joy to have you with us as we go on a little journey, dodging about a topic we're curious about. If you looked Curious Brain Fart up in the dictionary, what would it say?
Well, if you've ever wondered what a curious brain fart is, simply put, it's Lou and I having a chat about something as we normally would do, that piques our interest in some way. I nearly said perks.
Perks, peaks, same thing.
So it became sort of periodics.
Hybrid words. That's another Curious Brain Fart. It's one for the list.
Hello, Lou.
Hello, Paul.
Nice to see you.
To see you, nice.
Other game shows are available.
Right.
So this week, thought we might have a little stab at something that we're super clued up on and very much deep subject matter experts. Startups.
And when you say stab, you don't. We're
I
not
mean
taking that
pokey.
literally. We're not taking that literally.
No, we're not going to stab any startups. We're going to get curious about startups.
Interesting. Have you got any startup stats, Paul? Because I've got a funny feeling that there's a high failure rate, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I heard somebody say the other day, and this is somebody who invests in startup businesses, that is their business. They said, I would rather invest in somebody who's failed 3 times. Why? Because they've made some probably very interesting mistakes that they've learned from, and they're more ready now to thrive and to fly than they were when they first started their startup journey. So in that context, failure is not seen as a negative thing. It's seen as, well, of course, that's just a step in the journey. And I'm not saying, obviously, not all startups fail. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that this guy had a really interesting perspective on things that haven't worked out, which I thought was, not conventionally necessarily how people would look at that.
Yes. So, let's not use the Oxford English Dictionary. I'm going to Cambridge.
Oh, fine.
Naughty.
Whatever.
So, startup, the act or process of starting or making something start. Nice.
Groovy.
So, there are definitely stats on how well startups perform.
And there are hubs for startups, aren't there? Why is that?
Why do people start up?
Because so you have the entrepreneur, right? Or you have somebody who's discovered something or invented something. So in all those cases, there's something that they want to bring forward. It's a service, it's a product, whatever it is. It doesn't exist yet in this current iteration or form or innovation or whatever. Or maybe it does. And they've just got a different flavour. And
it might be they want more of the same. And
so why do people start up? They start up because they've got something new, innovative, creative that they want to offer. They've got a new take on something that's already there that they want to offer. They want to...
You have a belief in something.
Yes. You don't... It's not always to make piles and piles of cash. Because you can start up a not-for-profit.
Or a charity.
Or a charity. So...
Or a podcast.
Right. You're welcome.
I mean, it's like a public service.
Right. Exactly that. So it's... You have a belief in something and you want to bring it to the world in some way.
I think there's a myriad of reasons why someone would embark on starting something up. And I think a lot about the journey of doing something. So when you're starting something up, where that could be a habit, it could be a company, it could be a podcast, it could be posting on social media, whatever. When you're starting something, it's because you've not done it before. So it is your startup. It is not the start of an industry, the start of something. It's you starting something up. And that is often fraught with struggles and challenges and all sorts of things. I think about my own experience. There's a huge amount of learning that has to go on.
Yep.
There's lots of traps and pitfalls. There's lots of decisions. There's a limited amount of resource, be that time, money, people, whatever. So you have to be creative. It has pushed me well outside of my comfort zone and forced me to look at things very differently than if I were operating in something that is already established.
Yes. And you find often when things are starting up, if they're going to thrive, if they're going to, if you're going to breathe life into it, whether it's a habit or a business or a charity, there has to be passion for this thing, belief in this thing, a clear vision. There's a story that you can tell that engages other people. It's easy for people to grasp and understand, etc., etc., etc. There are lots and lots of layers to this onion.
Yeah.
At the core of it is your passion for and belief in the thing that you're starting.
Yep. And that could be within your job.
Yes.
You could be starting a new approach to managing the house and, divvying up chores or whatever. Could be starting a band or a creative endeavor. There's so many variations for this, and those ingredients, let's be curious about some of those ingredients. For sure, you need passion. You need to care about whether this thing starts or not. And if you're indifferent, if you're not entirely sure, well, yeah, I mean, we could give it a go.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, I know, that's already giving you a clue.
Yes.
About your belief in it.
Because you need vim and you need vigour. This is going to test you. It's going to ask a lot of your time. So, I'm thinking more on the business, not necessarily business. If you want to get something into a state of momentum and it's currently stationary, it requires a shove.
Yep.
And depending on how big the thing is or how much traction you can get, it might need a bigger shove or a more sustained shove.
And that makes me think about, you might be starting on the flat. You might be starting with a downhill.
Yes.
You might be starting with an uphill.
Yeah.
And invariably, you will encounter all of those on your journey.
For sure.
So nothing is like, there is no definitive perspective necessarily on this.
No.
Because you might, if it was business and you're talking downhill, you might have loads of backing.
Mm-hmm.
You might have loads of money. You might be enabled with great mentors. You might have loads of customers already knocking on your door and you haven't even started.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a good example of a downhill.
Yeah.
And so at some point you will encounter a flat period, and at some point you will encounter an uphill. And it really depends on what's going on inside for you. If I think about this in, without trying to hold on to a particular scenario and without trying to put any of my biases up front, it really depends on what's going on inside and how I am relating to the things that I'm encountering.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes, and the minute that relationship isn't working, and that could be for a number of different reasons, all sorts of things, then you will lose momentum inevitably, / come to a complete stop again.
Yeah.
So, and then there's another big push needed.
Yeah.
The difference is, I think, when things stall, and they can, and that's normal, you've already got the experience of getting it moving. So you're not starting from zero again.
Yes.
You know that if you nudge it on the left-hand corner and then kick it on the right, it's going to get moving. You know, for example. So you've got some experience you can apply when you get things back into momentum or pick the pace up or whatever. So it can feel a bit defeating for it to have stopped, but you're not back to square one.
And that's triggered in me is, so, we're talking about how we relate to things, our relationship to things. And in one of the other episodes, I can't remember which one it was, we were talking about failure and failing. It was the wisdom one.
Yes.
Because it was about getting wiser about understanding failure and so on. Therefore, what you were talking about a moment ago in terms of if I've run out of momentum and I need to restart, one of the big things, and I think for myself, is my relationship, how I relate to failure. Because it's always been taught societally and systemically, failure is a bad thing. You don't do well enough at school, don't fail your exams, don't fail at your job, don't fail, because if you fail you get fired. There's consequences, negative consequences to failure. And one of the things that I've had to learn quite quickly is to embrace that failure, not in a cheesy, there's lots of cheesy stuff around, failure is really great. And until you actually believe it and experience it for yourself as something that is not just a negative, then it's very difficult to tune into it as a positive. Because one of the first things that happens is getting over disappointment. I thought it was going to be like this, and it's not. So that idea, that business, that whatever has failed. I'm really disappointed. So the ability to get up past that, to then go, okay, so how could I now generate this momentum again to restart this thing, to get it going again? It's very important to be able to tune into that quickly. And because I'm blessed with the same human condition as everyone else, I can't always tune into that.
No. And applying, so things haven't worked out, you apply the learnings, and then when you restart the momentum, it's not either with the same shaped thing, or it is with the same shaped thing, but you've employed different levers and pulleys and all sorts of other things to get it underway because you've learned things. And it strikes me that people who operate in a startup mode in whatever setting, to a greater or lesser extent, embrace the very real possibility of it going wrong.
Yep.
To whatever degree. They value progress over perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that mindset around being able to try things out, iterate, learn, adapt, keep going, in a more established setting, whatever that is, a lot of that iterative work's already being done, and you have a much more established way of doing things.
And what that made me think about is, you know, the challenges of a startup company are very different to the challenges of trying to start something up in an established company.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for example, it's very easy to identify the headwinds for a startup business.
Yep.
You know, your resources, your funding, your
Yep.
customer, blah, blah, blah. Great. Within something that is established, I think the headwinds are less tangible. Culture, attitude to change. So I'm trying to start a new, I don't know, process. Well, this is never going to work. We've tried 10 of them before and it never worked. So if I just sit still long enough, it'll go away.
Yeah.
So the headwinds can be very different.
Yeah, very different.
And no less frustrating. And I also wonder to what extent the difference, the attitude difference there is with failure, between failure of a startup, well, you've tried and you had a lot of visible headwinds, and the failure of an initiative that you're trying to start up in something that is established. Well, I knew that was going to fail because we tried that already. Or this had better work.
Yeah, because that's always a really great thing, isn't it? This had better work, everyone.
You've got 2 months.
That's super helpful to everyone involved. Not. I wonder whether there's a thing here around all of those things that you described are alive and well in both environments. It's just that some are more visible or above the waterline than others.
Yeah.
And when you're starting up a company, those headwinds are clear and measurable. And guys, we've got 6 months of money left, or whatever, you know, whatever it is. They're less. They're more like an iceberg under the surface in a more established organisation.
Yeah.
They're still there, though.
100%.
And you're less likely to encounter things like serious change fatigue in a startup, because it's all, you know, vibrant. You're much more likely to have people coalesced around a strong belief and vision. People really, really believe in it. They're invested in it. That's much less tangible in some more established organisations. So there's puts and takes.
There are. One isn't better than the other.
No, they're just differently challenging.
Yeah, they are just differently challenging. And so, because what was going through my head was, with a startup business, like you said, you have this group of impassioned people. They are there to take a risk.
Yeah,
they're not there because it's guaranteed to pay their mortgage.
Nah.
They are there to take a risk. Let's try. Let's do something different and see what happens. Trying to start something up in an established organisation, you may not have sponsorship from executives, from finance, from the other stakeholders. with whom it will impact or affect,
Mm-hmm.
with your peers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's interesting because you need to be able to tune in. When I think about, in my experience, when inside startups haven't worked or
Mm-hmm.
have been extremely challenging,
Mm-hmm.
there's only one thing that, in my experience, that I've needed to rely on the most, and that is building this sense of passion around it.
Yeah.
Tuning into something other than this is annoying and my day job and blah, blah, blah. And when I think about one of the stickiest, most successful examples, and maybe there's only one, I designed a logo,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously is not my forte. Well, not necessarily obviously. It's not my forte. That's not what I would say I'm good at. I created a logo, created a slogan. All of it was fun-based.
Mm-hmm.
I then got T-shirts made at my expense and got people to buy in to what it is that we were trying to do through connecting to them in a different way. This isn't something hard and painful, you know, and these T-shirts and the slogan and the logo and everything were fun. They were meant to be fun to try and engage, disarm people.
So you were that visionary going around telling your story, and people were either connecting to it or they weren't. Your audience wasn't the big wide world, it was the organisation.
Yes.
And it strikes me that on a larger scale, when organisations, big established organisations, want to do something innovative, creative, new, they simply establish that startup entrepreneurial environment and have a little incubator of initiatives. Sometimes it's actually properly funded organisations, but they specifically create those conditions. Everyone else is beavering away on business as usual, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this incubator type vibe where all of those new things go because people recognise and realise that there are certain conditions that help these things to thrive.
And it makes me think about a conversation I was having, might have been this week or last week, I think, with somebody who was saying their approach to starting things up, particularly where it is impacting frontline people, is to not have a separate project and a project office and blah, 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 is to work out with the stakeholders quickly how to make it part of the day job so that a project doesn't become a side of desk thing. How do you start to integrate it from day one? So that when you're trying to start something, you start doing it from day one. And then I was also thinking about another example. I remember our dad, who worked in the motor industry for 300 years, knew Henry Ford personally, and he was saying, someone asked him once why this group of people who were sat in a room on their own, who were really highly paid, who appeared to do nothing all the time, why that was okay when we're working really hard on other things. And it was a car manufacturer. And the reason being is because these people were trying to innovate. They were trying to start something completely new. And what they come up with could generate hundreds of millions, could save hundreds of millions. So there is this challenge to do with, well, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to do it quickly. We need to fail fast, etc. True. And it's not always true. Because it might be iterative failing in order to ultimately get to something that you have got no idea. Like some of the best inventions, just very quickly, like penicillin. That wasn't because he was trying to start something that...
it's accidental.
It was totally accidental.
Post-it notes.
Post-it note. Without that, you wouldn't have those things.
So, yeah, because there's this idea, grow or die. And And to a degree that is true. We are in perpetual motion in all senses.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
I'm feeling dizzy.
Right. My head is spinning. So that is true for us as people. It's not literally, I'm not saying...
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying. I'm just so glad I'm so erudite and lucid today. I'm just babbling. Sorry about it.
She says using the word erudite.
So what we're saying is there's a certain vibe around startup businesses, and that energy and some of the things that make the ones who are successful really, really successful, their passion, their belief, their focus, their relentlessness, etc., their ability to take risks, their ability to run towards things that are not certain and to live in that uncertainty. Those are the things that we can borrow and apply to anything that we might want to do differently in any setting, because I think to stand on the shoulders of giants, to model and emulate the conditions that we know make these things successful, is a smart thing to do.
Yes. So I guess startups is actually a bigger topic than maybe we imagined when we first started babbling about this. There's I was trying to find this a car manufacturer that we were talking about the other day, who have been going for years and still are operating very much in startup mode. They haven't actually sold a car yet. They've got some prototypes and hydrogen cars.
They're called River Simple.
That's it. I was trying to... I knew it was River Summit. I knew it was Summit Simple.
Yeah, they're pre-production. They're pre-revenue. They're funded. They're completely funded by investors at this time.
Yeah. And so... thinking about, again, this iterative side of things, sometimes a full iteration is a startup business coming to life and dying.
Mm-hmm.
That's the iteration. Sometimes, like River Simple, it's start with Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, or whatever of the cars that they're designing.
Mm-hmm.
The start-up, which they are, is still going after however many years.
Yep.
So it's none of this comes back, actually, interestingly, to our very first episode, Simple Not Basic. This stuff just isn't basic. Because there is no right or wrong. It's right and wrong. There's success and failure. It's not success or failure.
Yes, that's true. And, all of those quotes that, I've been successful once and I've tried 100 times or whatever. Those are the two sides of the coin.
I feel like that maybe, well, certainly myself, I forget that regularly, and then can find myself dwelling on the failure, as opposed to going, well, that's one more iteration down. I'm getting closer.
Especially if we're able to lean into the discomfort of it having gone wrong on whatever level and learn something.
And that can take time, I guess.
And it can be a flash of inspiration.
Yes.
And it just depends. The point being, it's a step on the journey. No matter how small you might think the learning is. And so these failures I mean, it's such a loaded word.
It is.
And I'm in my head. I'm trying to find another word that means the same but is less loaded, because
Learnings
yeah,
may also be loaded.
and
Experiences.
there's not. And then I'm challenging myself. If we use the word failure
Mm-hmm.
and say it's an absolutely necessary part of success,
Mm-hmm.
we maybe decouple or
Mhm.
or then can look into and say, well, there's this comes down to how we handle mistakes and how we handle things that don't quite go the way we thought. It's our sense of trying to control everything, and it's our sense of trying to be perfect at everything, and all these other things, and it's different for everybody. I think the people who are very successful at starting things up are also very comfortable with failing.
Yeah.
Not in the sense that they like it, but in the sense that they accept it as part of the journey and embrace it for what it is, and don't make it something that it isn't. It's not a character flaw.
No, that's right. And there's a few, there's lots of visuals that people have done about this stuff, integrating failure and success, because neither is unilateral or universal.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one I was looking at the other day by Roberto Ferraro. He's a very talented guy. He does illustrations and all sorts of stuff.
Nice.
Not as his day job, just as a hobby to express things. And he did this one of Lego blocks. And you got the success and failures and how they all integrate together. And it's so necessary.
Yes.
It's not success or failure. And it might be the success at managing yourself that day.
Mm-hmm.
The success of earning some money that day. The success of implementing something. Whatever.
Because if we accept that our reality is a perspective or set of perspectives that we've chosen, then we can choose how we look at failure, and seeing it, welcoming it as a necessary part of the learning we need to ultimately become successful, as a step on our journey, as a Lego brick in our structure.
Yeah.
Rather than wanting a smooth path of success to be the one that we are on, because that isn't and the reason that's such a fallacy is because that just isn't the way it works. We all know that.
And yet we cling on to this belief.
We do.
Maybe it'd be different.
And there's been some really helpful things said around, don't view this as an overnight success, because that's not the way that it's happened. And my son watches some YouTubers. He's really into vehicles, and there is a few YouTube folks that he really likes. And he says, they've got how many million followers. But he's able then, because their whole catalogue of work is available, to go back and look at that relatively basic iteration at the very start when they began, and and the production value wasn't there, and they were a bit sketchy on this, that, and the other, all the way through 6 years later of diligent effort, constant improvement. They're now this much slicker outfit over here, buying a Lamborghini or whatever they're doing, and that he can see the journey, though. That's my point.
Yeah, which is great. Which is like that Ed Sheeran example. He was on a UK talk show quite a while ago now, a few years ago. I think it was on Jonathan Ross or something like that, UK talk show. And Ed Sheeran was on it, and he was very open about this point. And to prove his point, he played his first recording.
I've seen that.
Oh my days.
Awful.
It's really awful. He is cringing in a compassionate way to how he showed up, because the point is he started.
Yes.
Without him starting that up,
Yes.
he wouldn't be where he is today.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't, you got discovered and now look what's happened. No. Just the same as your YouTube point.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over and over again, having a go, getting better and better, learning from all of these things. I think startups is a really fascinating topic.
And it happens at a micro level within us and at a macro level with organisations, societies. It happens on all sorts of levels. And I think what we're really saying is that in essence, it's the same, because you have to have passion, belief, commitment, focus, energy, all these things.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to know all the answers. You don't have to have all the skills and capability.
All the resources.
You don't have to have all of that.
No.
But you do have to have the passion, the commitment, the energy, the focus, and the willingness and the acceptance of failure, mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
That's
uncertainty.
All of that. That's all part of the journey.
Yeah.
Without it, you won't succeed.
So, if somebody said, "Oh, so what's the secret to starting something up?" I think my answer from this conversation would be you. You're the secret.
Mm-hmm.
All the other things will come. You're the secret. Without you, it won't happen. Oh, yes, but I need money and I need this and I need that. Uh-huh. And you can unlock all of these things.
Yes, I completely agree. And the other thing I would say is to begin.
Mm-hmm.
Progress over perfection. Tiny, weeny baby steps. Something. Just begin.
Kind of like the way we've done this podcast. We could have talked about it to the nth degree. Believe it or not, we do about 2 minutes of preparation, if that, before each episode, and we just decided to start. We were aligned on, some key elements. We don't know the answers. It's not too heavy. We want to be able to be ourselves, have a conversation, feel like we're welcomed into people's ears or wherever they're listening. Typically with their ears. Other listening is available.
Paul, the anatomy expert.
Yes, PhD. And we've just made a start. Progress over perfection.
Love that.
Nice. Good work. Well, thanks for coming.
See you on the flippity floppity.
Okay, we're off to the beach. Bye.
So, Paul.
Yes, Louise.
Listeners, he made a gormless face and it made me laugh. I'm not apologising for it. And that's that. Mic drop. Anyway, before I drop the mic.
No, please don't. They're actually quite expensive.
Paul, how can people get in touch with us if they've got something interesting or even just something that they want us to be curious about?
Well, they could start off by getting some letterhead paper and a wax seal. And if you just write Curious Brain Farts and stick it in the post, it will make its way to us.
Like when people send a letter to Father Christmas.
Precisely. There's another way. You could also drop us an email, thankfully, drop us an email to curiousbrainfarts@gmail.com.
Curious Brain Thoughts.